Real quick before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that Kelsey and Allyson are doing another round of Heretic Haven. And if you're a fifth line, you can save $55 when you sign up with my code JustFollowJoy55. So if you don't know, Heretic Haven is a careful and immersive exploration of the fifth line experience. From projection, villainization, and victimization to acceptance, responsibility, and empowerment. Guided by Allyson and Kelsey, both seasoned fifth lines and educators, it's an experience designed to lift the veil on the projection field. It's a fantastic resource for anyone struggling with the unique life journey of a heretic profile, because if this is you, you've probably noticed it's not always easy out there where you're projected onto much more than the average person, and you weren't necessarily trained on how to deal with that. But it can get a lot easier when you know what's going on and how to handle it, especially with the help of one-of-a-kind experts like Kelsey and Allyson. There really aren't a lot of programs and groups out there created for the needs and the education of the five line, so I think this is such a powerful opportunity, not just to find support in a community of people like you, but also learn practical tools to use your design to heal and thrive. Registration is already open and the program starts on October 12th, so if you want to join in, make sure you don't miss out. Just go to www.heretichaven.com and use the code JustFollowJoy55 to get that $55 off when you sign up, or go to the show notes or description for the link. Thanks. Bye. Hello and welcome to Just Follow Joy. My name's Ariana. I'm a human design guide and teacher, and I'm so stoked you're here today because we're talking to two other amazing human design guides and teachers, Kelsey Rose Tortorisi and Allyson Forseth. And we're talking about living and deconditioning as three different aura types, also known as energy types. And just so you know, this conversation is actually a two-parter. So this episode on Just Follow Joy is the first half, and then the second half is on Kelsey's podcast, The Maya Games. So make sure to go listen to that too, so you don't miss out. Kelsey and Allyson have been on the show before to talk about five-line profiles overall. People loved hearing from them, so you might already know them. And by the way, if you haven't watched or listened to that episode, I'm going to link it in the description below because you should definitely check it out, especially if you are a five-line profile. So 5-1, 5-2, 2-5, or 3-5, or if you have a five-line profile in your life and you just want to be able to understand and support them a little bit better. But anyway, so you might know them, but if you don't, Kelsey is a 5-2 emotional manifestor, a human design guide, astrologer, and host of the Maya Games podcast. Allyson is a 5-1 emotional projector, a human design guide, trauma-informed embodiment mentor, educator, and transformation facilitator. And she also does work in somatic healing. And then together, they're also the founders and facilitators of Heretic Haven, which is a group program specifically for fifth line profiles. And what's really cool about getting Kelsey, Allyson, and me together is that we are each five lines, which is a common thread that holds us together, but we're also different energy types. So in the last episode we talked about what we had in common in our experiences through our profile. But in this one, we're actually talking about how our experiences differ, even though we are all five-line profiles. We talk about our experiences with our energy types, in particular, our signatures and our not self themes. And if you're new to human design or you just need a little bit of a refresher, a signature is the specific energetic signature or feeling, and it's a good feeling that we calibrate to when we're living in alignment with our design. So this happens automatically when you are following your strategy and authority. You're living in alignment with how your aura is built to operate. And it feels really good. And it's actually what each energy type's aura or body like seeks. So for example, as a generator, I am always seeking through whatever I'm doing to feel satisfaction. On the other hand, our not self theme is the not so good feeling, the vibration we don't usually enjoy being in, because it's here to show us that we're not living in alignment and we actually need to do some course correcting. So on the other hand, we'll talk about this in the episode, but I have the not self theme as of frustration. So when I feel that energetic vibration, that's a really big red flag for me. That's a sign that I need to get back into alignment with how I'm built to operate correctly. So we talk about what these mean, what ours are, how it feels when we're in them, but also real life examples of how these work. So I'm going to put the link to the second part of the episode down below. It is really juicy. I highly recommend it. And of course, as always, if you like Just Follow Joy, if you love Just Follow Joy, and you want to get free human design info on the reg, make sure to hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe on whatever platform you're accessing this on to make sure that you never miss an episode. With all that said, let's go hear from Allyson and Kelsey. So Kelsey and Allyson had so many like cool topics that we could have talked about today. Honestly, could have gone in a lot of different directions. My sacral center was lit up by all of them. But one that felt particularly fascinating to me was this idea of the intersection of energy type in profile, as Kelsey was saying, especially because we have that 5 line as the thread through, all of our experiences of life and existence. But then we have that different perspective coming from our energy type, right? Like we're just naturally going to approach life differently in that way. So I think what would be cool is to start off by talking about like what our signatures and what our not self themes feel like for us. So that we can have like a better idea of what that means when we're talking about how the 5 line has affected that for us. So Kelsey and Allyson, first off, how does peace and how does anger feel? And then how does like success and bitterness feel for you, especially with your particular design?
Can I just say first that this is like such an important topic in general, like 5th line stuff aside, I feel like there's not enough discourse about what these frequencies of the signature and not self themes actually are. And just like with everything else in the world and in human design, like language and concepts have so much baggage that's so deeply conditioned. And like it can take time, I think, for people to resonate with some of this basic language, even frustration, satisfaction, peace, anger, bitterness, success, disappointment, surprise, like and like the concept of work, I talk about that a lot when I'm teaching living your design, that like I think so many generators immediately don't resonate with human design because they're told that they like are meant to be the workforce and they can get satisfaction from work. And like in this like late capitalism world that we live in, like so few people are satisfied through work and so few people are like actually resourced to achieve satisfaction through work. So anyways, I just really appreciate you're being drawn to this topic and you like focusing in on the not the signature not self themes. But on a personal level, it took me a really long time to resonate with the idea of anger. I did not resonate with it as a manifestor, and I think that's the case for a lot of condition as women manifestors. And I think part of that is definitely like suppressing our anger and being like brought up and taught to you're not allowed to be angry, you know. And I think there's probably a piece of that like gender and gender assignment aside is probably true for a lot of manifestors because anger is often projected upon to be like a weapon. And so like people think anger is not safe. And I don't think that's necessarily true. But anyways, for me, like I'm one of those weird manifestor designs with all projected channels. So I don't have any manifested channels, which there's not a lot said about this, and maybe Ra taught about it, but I haven't heard anything directly from Ra. Like anger, I think probably has a different frequency when it's coming through all projected channels. So my anger has always had a very bitter edge to it. And I resonated with bitterness more at first than anger. And I think everybody probably resonates with bitterness because most of the channels in the body graph are projected, right? So it's like a big part of all of our experience. But for me, like I started tapping into anger when I started tapping into the frequency of my anger and understanding like, oh, that's anger. That's what it feels like. Okay, I do understand how anger hits me on an auric level, channels aside, like my aura creates the experience of anger for me. When I started realizing that anger was connected to like, sorry, I'm saying this weird. I started tapping into my anger when I started feeling it in all these like really tiny ways and thinking about like how, for some reason, the examples that always come up are like technology troubleshooting when I'm just like trying to do something simple and the tech isn't working and I can't figure out why. I get so angry. And then the other thing I always think of is if I'm very impatient, which is I think a manifestor thing, but also an Aries stellium thing. If I'm like trying on clothes in a dressing room, I'm never like careful to take them off the thoughtful way. I'm just like, and so if I get stuck, you know, like that's one of the examples that has always come to mind for me. Just like trying to get a shirt off and it gets kind of stuck, I get like fuming angry, similar to with troubleshooting. And so, yeah, that's how I started being connected to my anger. It's just when anything gets in the way. It's just when there's any resistance whatsoever, I get angry. And I think I can't remember the timeline of it, but I know learning from Alok Diaz helped me too, because Alok for me like connected the idea of anger and like irritation, or anger and impatience, and anger and resistance, and just thinking about how the manifestor aura is not designed to respond. It's not designed to deal with the outside world. And that's why it pushes. That's why it repels, to make space for us to do whatever the thing is we're trying to do. And any resistance to that is going to create anger. So for me, like connecting impatience and resistance to the idea of anger helped me see that it's a massive part of my experience. So that piece, that caveat I was saying earlier of like on a channel level, I experience bitterness, I think is true. But on an auric level, like anytime my aura bumps into something that's in the way of me trying to do the thing I want to do, whether that's in motion, like in urge and initiation mode, or in rest, like in rest, it's different. It's I'm trying to rest and there's a need outside of me that wants me not to rest, like anger. In urge mode, it's like I'm moving and energy's coming out of me, and then energy meets resistance, there's going to be anger. And so it's like deeply impersonal, even when it is a person that I'm perceiving to cause the resistance, right? It's still deeply impersonal because it's not actually about that person, it's about the experience of resistance. So for me, anger just feels like impatience. There's something in the way and I'm impatient about it. And it's not my mind. You know, I don't want to be angry at the thing happening. It's like this physical thing because my body, my aura is not designed to wait or to respond or to dance with the thing in the way, or to like cooperate even, right? My aura is designed to do the thing, to move in the direction of its prerogative, and or to not move. And anything being asked of me outside of that is going to create resistance and make me angry. I just talked forever. Should we maybe focus on not self and then flip in to signature?
I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
And also, what I wanted to say was like, you weirdly read my mind about the projected channels thing, because when I was looking at her chart, I was like, huh, she doesn't have any purely manifested channels, which is really interesting. And I've always wondered, honestly, does that feel like different? Like, do these people not really feel it like it is anger? And it's funny because I actually was talking to somebody who they're like, in this person's energy right away, I was like, this person's a manifestor. I can tell. And in her design, she is. And she was like, no, I don't identify with being manifestor at all. I don't identify with that. That's not, and she knew human design, but she was like, no, I don't think I actually am. And I was like, really? Because that's totally not how I feel your energy at all. And then for Allyson, how do you experience bitterness?
Yeah, it's always so funny when Kelsey and I talk back to back because I relate so much to her experience, and I don't have any manifested channels or even any motors connected to the throat, very much a projector. But the word irritated is a word that I hear Kelsey use. I'm not going to say often, but like with some level of frequency. And it has made me more aware of when I'm feeling irritated, and like where that sort of like bubbling up of this thing needs to happen, and there's something in the way, or it's not as easy as we want it to be, or it's not flowing like we want it to. Um, yeah, and I think that like Aries and patience, I was, as I was hearing Kelsey talk, I was imagining myself with a close friend of mine who I've known since high school, who is a reflector. And for some reason, anger is just like the funniest thing to him. It is, he just thinks it is hilarious. And so he moves really slowly, and I would often like take things out of his hands because he was moving so slowly that I'm like, just let me do it for you. Just let me do it for you. This is long before I knew anything about human design. And yeah, just that like Aries impatience, that like get out of my way, this thing needs to get done, I'm diving it head first. I really relate to as well. Bitterness, I would say, is like very much a different experience. It feels to me more like like an invisibility, like a collapsing sort of energy. And I think because of the nature of my design, I have two motors defined in my chart, and I'm a small split. So just one gate on either side would like connect my motors up to the throat. And so there is a lot of like go energy that's ready to move if that channel gets connected. So I do think my bitterness has a tinge of anger to it in the same way that Kelsey's anger has a tinge of bitterness to it. That I think that's part of why I relate to it. But the pure bitterness is like tears coming up, like constriction in the back of the throat, like, don't you fucking see me? I'm right here, you know? And I think examples that come up are like times where I've seen someone using my words or something I've said or a template that I've set up very blatantly repeating or reusing something that I've said or done or created or guided with no credit at all. And that's that kind of like, I just said this, why can't you hear me? Sort of, I'm not getting credit where credit is due. Yeah, and I mean, it can also be really little things like giving a suggestion for how to set up the chords. My partner was just setting something up in his bedroom and like how to set up the chords. And he was in generator frustration mode and he couldn't quite hear my suggestions. And then the day later, he's like, look, I made it work. And I'm like, that's what I said. and, and
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because this is like so. I hate to interrupt you, but my sister is a projector and my brother-in-law's a manifesting generator. And this reminds me so much of this story where he was driving the car and my sister was in the passenger seat and they had their friends who were a couple in the back. And she's like, you're gonna have to like pay the toll right here. Like you're gonna have to pay the toll right here. And he just like ignores her. And then they roll up and he's like, oh, you have to pay a toll here? And their friend in the back was like, yeah, dude, it's what she's been saying for the past 5 minutes.
yeah,
Well,
and
she didn't wait for him to ask, am I going to have to pay a toll up here? Just
Yeah.
kidding, but also
It is like,
not.
it's like the gift and the curse of foresight, right? Like we
yeah.
knew this was coming. I saw it coming from maybe in this case, literally miles away. and
Yeah.
there isn't a readiness for the information to be received. And so it falls on deaf ears. And it's like, again, I've been here the whole time. Can't you see me? Can't you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was gonna actually ask you with channel 1762, is it like, I mean, for most projectors, it's like something you've shared or like something you're speaking on, but in particular, like, hey, I see it could work this way. And like, I can see this structure. And this is like what I think and what I believe. And then that just like being ignored. Yeah. So it sounds like that is definitely an aspect to it.
There's a connection between like invisibility and bitterness for you, the way that there is with like impatience or resistance and anger for me.
Yeah. There have been little things on Instagram where I used to do these celebrity human design breakdowns, and like the way that I would do them was very strange, but it's the way that I liked. I would search for hours for quotes on the internet of people sharing things that I felt really clearly demonstrated their design. So I'm like digging, searching, first lining through everything on the internet to find quotes that like perfectly embody what I see in someone's design. And I would pair it with a raw quote to say like, wow, look at how clearly these two things are mirroring one another and this person doesn't even know their design. And I saw someone like a year after that do a post exactly like that, like the same exact setup. And there was like no credit. And it's like the 1762 very naturally creates templates. It's happened in every job I've ever had. It happens in the way that Kelsey and I work together too. It's like one thing gets set up and it's so easily reused because of the logical collective nature of that channel. But because it's so logical and collective and impersonal, people don't even know where it came from all the time. So that's happened too. And it's weird with stuff on the internet because it's a little harder to be like angry. It's just like, whoa, like you quite literally can't see me.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me because I was talking to a manifestor recently, and she was saying that like people stealing your stuff, that's just part of the manifestor experience because you're initiating something and then and then people get on the train. And it sounds like similar for you, Allison. I don't know if I've ever had that experience as a generator. Not really a big theme for my design. And I remember that one time I had this, it's still up. It's a blog post about manifesting generators. I wrote it years ago. And it had this stock photo of someone doing like a cartwheel. And I was on Instagram one day and I saw this Instagram profile that it was like, I'm a manifesting generator. Like, I love human design. I'm going to be like sharing human design stuff. And they had that stock photo. And I was like, that, you didn't just like come up with that, right? Because people don't look at cartwheels and immediately think human design manifesting generator. And I was like, I know you got that from my blog, and I know that's why I'm seeing you on my thing. That's the only time that's ever happened to me. But anyway, off on a tangent. For me, it's interesting because I was thinking about this the other day about I actually feel a lot of anger with frustration myself. And I think honestly, the reason for that is one, I have this very strong root to sacral center connection. So there's like this push of like, I got to get going. I really, really don't like to be blocked. And specifically that comes through gate 60 for me, which like gate 60 does not like limitations. Like it sees it, does not approve, and doesn't want them to be there, right? Like I want some way to blast through that because it's connected to gate 3 with me where I see the thing that I want to change. So there's that. And then also I have gate 22 and gate 36 as hanging gates. So at least a couple times during the month, I have a purely manifested channel, and they're like the spicy ones, in my opinion, because they have that emotional flavor to them. I do have this like kick to it, right? So like for me, I have the typical feelings of frustration, which are I am hitting a fucking wall. And no matter how hard I push to do this and like shove this brick wall out of the way, it's not happening. And then it just like gets me deeper and deeper into that space that generators get into where they're like, I will figure it out. If I just think and push and work harder, I'm going to have my breakthrough. And then of course that doesn't happen. Like I really need to just take a step away from it. But it's so interesting to the people around me, I'm sure. Well, maybe not interesting, maybe just annoying to the people around me who are like observing that, right? Because they can see how much I'm spiraling down into it. And y'all aren't sacral beings. So not only can you observe that, you can feel it too. And it's just everybody's like sucked in with me. And then there are like the people who are like, just do this, just take a break. And I'm like, no, I can't, and you get really stuck in it. And so that's a lot of words to describe frustration, is just feeling incredibly stuck, but also feeling like you could get out of it if you worked harder.
I always have this image come up with generator frustration, which Kelsey and I are both in relationships, nesting relationships with generators. So like we feel it a lot. We're very, very present with the frustration. But the image I always have growing up in a place where it snows is, or it could just be the mud too. Someone is stuck in the mud or stuck in the snow and they are flooring it. And the tires spinning, spinning, spinning. There's mud and snow flying everywhere. There's a bunch of people around like, just do this, just do this. And the generators in the front seat, like, I'm gonna fucking floor it and get out of this. And they're just digging themselves deeper into the mud every second that passes. That is like the best way I can describe how frustration feels or how I perceive it.
Yeah.
So true.
That's so interesting. And I was thinking the same thing as Ariana was like so acutely describing what it must look like to other people. I was thinking about how often Allyson and I are texting about how our partners are like stuck in some kind of frustration loop, and we're literally just sitting there like, we can do nothing until you're ready, until you're ready for Allison's case, for invited guidance. And in my case, I don't even know. I'm impatient, so I just like have no patience for it when someone's stuck in that. I'm like, do you want some fifth line practical solutions? Do you want me to initiate you out of this bullshit? If not, get the fuck out of my way, because you're either interrupting my rest or you're like taking energy away from the thing I want to be doing. But yeah, you described it really well. And I was also thinking, Ariana, about how like there's lots of reasons that you might feel like you resonate with anger, including those two, hanging gates or dormant potentials, but also frustration and anger, they're going to have a lot in common because they're both connected to a motor, right? Like the sacral motor in your case, and for manifestors, whatever motors are going to the throat, it's like they're both a differentiated experience of like motorized energy trying to do something and there being something in the way. Or I guess in both of our cases also like not having the energy to do something that we're trying to do. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of overlap. I don't know what I would describe the difference as. If someone asked me, could you describe the difference between frustration and anger? I would probably just go off and do a tangent about like how the generator aura works and the manifestor aura works, you know, and we could probably find the difference there. But I think just the fact that they both have to do with energy, which isn't the case for projectors and reflectors, there's going to be a lot of overlap between those two not self themes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which is actually, I wanted to say something else real quick. I think it's really interesting for manifestors, you know, I think it sounds to me like the not being able to tap into or relate to your not self theme has a lot to do with that, like kind of being suppressed or people telling like you really shouldn't feel this, like you shouldn't do that. And Allyson, I don't know if you would relate to this, but I feel like I can see this in reflectors in particular and also generators. The idea that like you should live your life as being a frustrated or like kind of bitter and disappointed person. I think a lot of people have just been trained that that's what life is. And it's like if you get that feeling, that actually doesn't tell you much. It doesn't show you that you're on the wrong path. And at least for me, I know that when I felt frustrated in the past, like I didn't see it as a red flag. I was just like, well, this is just, I just am. You know, it's not because like I wasn't putting my energy in the right place. So
That's
I don't know if you
interesting.
guys relate to
Like
that, but
frustration and bitterness, are you saying are almost like societally accepted and like
yeah, a little bit
accepted, but
more.
also the norm? Like we just don't even realize, we don't see them as symptoms of dis-ease, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Just something I'm positing. Yeah. And so with the signatures, I'd love to hear how these feel because that would be a lovely uplifting thing.
I want to hear success first if you feel ready, Allyson. That's one of the that's probably the most loaded and like with programming and conditioning of all the themes, the signature themes.
Yeah, I want to first I posted a meme yesterday on the Heretic Haven at heretic.haven Instagram account. And it was about 5-1s. And since we're talking about the intersection of profile and type, I feel like this is worth stating. But the meme basically says, me when I fall short of a goal, agony. Me when I meet or exceed a goal, okay. And that's, I feel like, very important to say here for a 5-1 because the success thing, it's like it's combined with reputation paranoia and like instability of the first line and you know all of that stuff. So I don't know that like when I hear the word success, I picture someone like arms to the wind, like opening up, like success top of the mountains, like screaming to the world, I am successful. um and I don't know that I personally experienced that. And I think too, so much of what I see online, especially with some of the larger projector accounts, success is so, like Kelsey said, it's so loaded societally. Um, Success does have a connection to the material world, and projectors can't be successful if they don't have finances that support them in some way. But I think that there's this narrative that when a projector is living their design, like money's just coming to them. Like it's happening. They're going to be taken care of. It's not going to be a problem anymore. And even just watching the evolution of some of the popular projector accounts, it goes from these moments of success that feel so authentic and intimate, like these little moments of changing someone's life with guidance and like that feeling like enough for the heart, enough, not the human design heart, but just enough for the heart to feel successful. And it goes to getting all these like lymphatic drainage treatments and false eyelashes and not worrying about how much interior design costs, and like it just spirals out into, oh, success is actually this, it has nothing to do with the other, it's about my own success on the material plane and acquisition. And I don't know, I guess I don't know if that's what success really is. Maybe that's that person's version of success. The person I have in mind is innocence motivated, so I'm projecting some projecting some
desire transference.
yes, thank you, Kelsey, onto that experience. But going back to those little moments that are about the other, as projectors are here for the other, here to answer the question, who are you? Some of the success moments that I experience are like little moments where someone acknowledges that I said something in a way that someone else couldn't have. And sometimes it's these little, like, I was on a call with a friend a couple of months ago, and she was just talking, like, just 3 self-projected channels, just like talking, letting things come out. And I was listening to her, and there was this one moment where, like, I felt my attention just drift away and then come back. And I was like, did you believe what you just said? And she listened back to like what she had just said, and she was like, no, I don't actually believe that. And the next day she said it felt like a knot got untied in her heart. And it's like little stuff like that, being so attuned to the other that you can feel the dissonance between their energy and what they're saying, or their energy and what they're actually doing, and being able to just like tweak, like it feels like a little dial, just like tweaking it ever so slightly. So things like that. Yeah, I mean, there was a moment, this was also with a friend who paid me for a reading focused on color. So we talked about the 4 transformations and her determination, environment, view, and motivation. And she was in this like stuck period postpartum. She had 3 boys under the age of 2 at this time. And she was like wanting to get back into work in some way. And through this conversation, she shared a couple different examples of times when she had felt successful as a projector. And I was like, wow, one of those sounds really different. Like, what if you connected with those people from that one story that felt really different? And she ended up getting invited to do a totally custom job that they designed just for her because they wanted her back so bad. And she was really successful in that role. It was human design focused. She got to do human design readings for a real estate agency, which was really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, it's like these little moments where you, for me, where I like know someone so well, or I can see someone so well in a specific moment, that it's these little adjustments of like attuning to the frequency of what they're saying and being able to recognize that. Like projectors are here to be recognized, but we're also here to recognize in others. Yeah, I've been doing also a lot of more like somatic work and parts work with my clients, and it is giving me access to a depth that I don't have when I'm just talking about human design with people. And just being able to kind of like, feels like looking under the hood instead of just like looking at the car outside. And yeah, just being able to make these like fine-tuned adjustments by even just by saying something or offering a little like somatic practice. And those things to me feel like success. I'm telling a lot of stories, but pardon my Pisces Mercury, but that success to me feels like, yeah, that like, wow, I did that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your Gate 56 storytelling. I love it personally, but I also appreciate this because for me, especially as a non-projector, I've always felt like success is the hardest signature to not just explain to other people, but just to understand myself, right? Because like I don't even have any projected channels in my chart. Like I'm never really gonna feel an aspect of that.
When I teach living your design, the aura type order that I teach it in is generator, manifestor, reflector, projector, because I think in that order, it becomes increasingly more complex to connect the other basics of design to the aura type themes and mechanics. Like for the generator, it's all about the sacral. You understand the sacral, you understand the generator, right? For the manifestor, it gets a little more complex because you have to understand the concept of a motor going to the throat. For the reflector, it's hard to grasp for a lot of us because being completely undefined is just like impossible for 99% of us to imagine. But on a like intellectual level, it's easy to understand because it's all undefined. With the projector, it's like there's no one or two or three concepts that you can like zone in on and understand the aura mechanics. It's a lot more complex than that. And so I think just, yeah, just like a gratitude for the stories, because I think hearing those are the only way you can tap into this kind of complex topic of success and bitterness. And also just appreciate you bringing the success heresy, because I think there's a lot of shitty projector education out there from projectors who are not aware of how deeply conditioned they are.
That's such a good point, Kelsey, about how complex success is for projectors. I have heard someone say that if you ever want a projector to feel recognized, you can just literally read the keynotes of the channels that they have in their chart, and they will feel recognized. And even at like thinking back to the stories I just told, it's like the channel of transformation, like recognizing where the ambition is very, that is very much in my design. I literally have the channel of recognition, which is about being able to recognize a feeling in the self and in the other. And yeah, I mentioned some stories of like feeling copied or not recognized with my 1762, but there have also been moments where people have been like, wow, this is amazing. Can I do this version? And they like shout me out in the first line of their caption. And I'm like, of course, like I made this thing and it can be used now.
I love
Yeah.
that little projector hack. I'm gonna use that with my projectors now. Like,
Yeah,
let
me
me
too.
see their channels and make sure that I'm shouting out those
get rid of
yeah.
yeah.
Also I really like that you pointed out the inherent nature of the projector, like the inherent nature of success being connected to the other, because that's how the projector aura type works. I used to say, like, way early when I was studying and starting to teach design, I used to say that projectors are like energetic surgeons, but some of the language that you used made me want to change it to energetic chiropractors. These like little adjustments that put you into more alignment and more ease, right? And I also sometimes talk about how success is like, at least in some cases, connected to helping generators experience satisfaction. So language that was coming up for me listening to you speak was also like, it's success can be secondhand satisfaction, like that sense of relief the projector can have when they watch the big, it's like a small sense of relief for the projector, maybe watching this big sense of relief that a generator has when they get to shift from frustration into satisfaction, and the projector gets to feel successful when they know their awareness had something to do with that. And even more so when there's like recognition involved from the generator side.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand why a projector would for sure want some feedback on like how they absolutely shifted a like generator out of frustration, especially because like you can feel their frustration, right? You're like, I know how bad it was. So can you maybe recognize how this changed things, right? I can get that. Kelsey, what about you with peace?
Allyson, let me know how this template checks out for you. I was starting to play with this template of like, for me, peace is the absence of anger, right? So if I can understand the mechanics of my anger and everything I described earlier of like my aura meets resistance, basically, peace for me is just the opposite of that. And it almost just feels like a void to me. And so the template I'm suggesting maybe is that for all of us, signature is absence of, not self-theme. But I don't know if that would be as true, because unlike the projector and the generator, to some extent, the manifestor aura is kind of here to operate on its own. And so literally the absence of something outside of me pulling from me or like nagging on me or getting in my way, like that is what peace feels like. So maybe that is a little more true for the manifestor for the other types, because the things that create anger, the things that create resistance, the things that like activate my irritation and my impatience are always outside of my aura. Like they really don't have anything to do with what I'm doing. They have to do with the outside world having demands of me or the outside world getting in the way of what I'm doing. And so the absence of that just feels like peace. So that's what's coming up for me today. Like I don't know if I could describe the texture of peace the way that I can kind of describe the texture of anger. Because for me, peace is just I guess I shouldn't say it's always coming from the outside because it comes from conditioning too, right? Like I can push myself to move when my body wants to be at rest. Or I can entertain the things outside of me that seem to want response from me, or entertain the things outside of me that are begging for me to compromise. I can entertain those far longer than is actually correct for me, and that's going to create anger too. So it's not just physical outside my aura stuff, it's also the way that I'm conditioned, and my conditioning and my not self and transference lends me to want to like dance with the outside world in a way that's not correct for me, will lead me to anger too. But peace for me is just like the absence of interruption. It's the absence of anything outside of me pulling, or anything inside of me pressuring myself to act in a way other than what I'm in the mood to do at any given point. Yeah, I'm like trying to think, could I describe the texture of it? And I really just don't think I can. It's relaxed and it's really isolated. And I think that's been one of the hard pills to swallow in my manifestor deconditioning, is that like in order for me to have peace in relationship, um, the relationship is just, it's going to look so different from what is conventionally accepted and societally accepted as relationship norms. Because, and there's layers to this and nuances to this, but very generally speaking, for me to be at peace in an interaction of any kind, like I have to be initiating and I can't be tasked with much response. And so that doesn't mean that there's not like versions of conversation and back and forth, et cetera, that happen with people I'm in relationship with. But there's always got to be like some strong layer of I'm initiating and I'm acting and moving and speaking, or not acting and not moving and not speaking in exactly the ways that feel right for me, with little to no compromise, in order for me to feel at peace in this relationship. And that's a really scary thing for I think probably most manifestors, definitely me early on and still to an extent now, a really scary thing to embrace, like embracing that everything has to be on my terms in every relationship, in every interaction, in every working relationship, or there won't be peace here. And one thing that's helped me is understanding that, like, the same way Allyson and I were saying, we can feel the generator satisfaction in our undefined, or frustration in our undefined sacrals. Like my anger is not healthy for anyone to have to be around, right? So like me suppressing it out of this not self desire to not seem selfish or not seem uncooperative, right? Like that's not actually good for anyone. That puts the person I'm trying to be in relationship with in a position where neither of us are going to be able to access the healthy, aligned signature version of connecting with one another. So it kind of feels like I'll quote take the fall, I'll be the selfish one. I'll seem selfish if I have to and let the chips fall where they may. That might mean that we won't be able to connect, and you might, as bring the fifth line into it, the other person or the other people might have a lot of stories about that, but ultimately, like me showing up over and over in this with this little drip of irritation, this drip of anger, it's not gonna create the conditions for us to relate to one another in a healthy way. But yeah, peace is the absence of having to do anything that I don't want to do.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. That's kind of how I've imagined it for manifestors, because it kind of just feels, I mean, the whole idea is that if we just let manifestors do their thing, they would just be the bullet trains towards that thing. Like the only problem is when you put a rock on the no, trains can crush rocks. If you put a boulder on the on the railway, right? Like that's when the problem is. That's when there's a train crash. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Oh, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, sometimes I think like peace is almost this afterthought. Like I'll be like when I'm angry, it's all consuming. I'm angry right now. But when I'm at peace, I'm just going about my day, doing my thing. I'm a train on my track. There's no boulders in the way. And then I'm like, oh, it's so much at peace right now, and it really is. I like the way that you can see it, the way that you see it from the outside. And it seems so obvious to you, Ariana. Like that helped me tap into peace in a new way, because it's like, yeah, it is obvious. It's literally me just doing my thing is extremely peaceful. It's so obvious that I don't even recognize it as like a thing. but I very much am aware when anger shows up because there's a huge fucking boulder in my way. And now I have to either crash into it or divert. And that takes a lot of energy, right? So yeah, peace is just like what's there. So yeah, full circle, it's coming back to that formula that I suggested. It's just the absence of anger.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful for manifestors listening because they could probably really relate to that. And it's so funny in this like train track metaphor. I'm like imagining some guy with like a curly mustache nearby, like going like this after like something put the boulder in the middle, or the damsel he's tied to the middle of the train tracks. That's interesting. And it's obviously the generator and manifestor experience is so different, just as the generator and projector experience is so different. But again, I think having that motor center be an important part of our design, there is somewhat of an overlap, because for me with satisfaction, what it feels like is, I mean, first off, it just feels like flow, and it feels like I can get on a roll and like really dig my hooks into something and just like go. And that might be a little bit, from the pure generator perspective, right? Like manifesting generators, there's probably also more of like an expansive feeling, right? Like I get to just, I get that freedom and that peace that comes along with the manifestor part of me. But for me as a generator, it's all about like, oh my God, I just get to like be in this thing I really, really love. And then part of my satisfaction is like I feel like power flow through me. It's like this release of like massive creative power, and life force energy and power. And when that gets, it's kind of like someone's opened the floodgates and this water just like surges outward. Like that is a shit ton of pressure getting released. And when you can put that into something, and like I almost see it like as if all that water is going to this wheel that like powers the energy of a city or something like that. Like that's just so, it is satisfying. Like that's the best word for it. Like this is being put in the correct place. And even if I don't see a result from that yet, although I probably will if this is the correct place for me to put my energy, even if I don't see a result from that yet, it's like, ooh, things like the wheels are turning, the gears are turning, right? And it's just flowing in the right direction. And that just makes me really freaking happy. Just, oh my God, I'm just talking about it now. And that reminds me of like the way that I should feel most of the time, right? Like I am somebody who can get so in my head about what I should do with my to-do list. But that really reminds me, it's like, that's why for generators, like it is all about being in the moment and feeling that, because that's the ultimate thing. Like that is the life force energy you're here to tap into and use. And so that's what satisfaction feels like for me. What is that? I'm actually really interested to know, what does satisfaction feel like to you guys, from like secondhand satisfaction from happy generators?
I mean, I
Success and peace.
I always have to come back to the anatomical connection of the sacral center to the reproductive organs, and that most of us have some semblance of familiarity with like being sexually frustrated and sexually satisfied. Like really coming back to that, like seriously, like what does it feel like when you're like getting excited and ready to go and you have to like get distracted and go do something else? Or like you're so close and then it just doesn't happen, right? That is so frustrating. And I just come back to that because I mean, it could be as simple as like, I know so many generators that watch, this is such a strange thing, but I know so many generators that watch like power washing videos and find
That's so fascinating.
so satisfying, like power washing something, and like the satisfaction of like when it's all clean and it's done and like you can rest now. And coming back to this, like the way that the sacral center feels like pent up and it's building and it's like almost done with that thing that they're building or doing or working on, whatever. And it's either going to be frustrated that the thing didn't finish, or it's going to be like the satisfaction of like, ah, like there it is and it's done. Yeah, but I mean, I always just like to come back to the anatomical because it really is like the sacral center really is about pleasure when it comes down to it. Um, the other thing that comes to mind with satisfaction is like having grown up with all generators in my family and like sitting on the couch at the end of the day after work. And this is presuming that the work isn't super frustrating to this person, but that like I have used up my battery for the day. Like I woke up with a full battery and I've drained it down and I'm like ready for bed. Like I'm tuckered out. I did the thing. I hiked the mountain, whatever it is. And like getting yeah, satisfactorily tired at the end of the day and like ready for rest. Like generators can use their energy in so many ways, but I have found not a lot of generators, not all of them. There is something to doing work that has some type of a physical component or some type of a visible result versus the work that so many people do nowadays is like sending emails and doing Zoom calls. And it's like, how do you know when you're done? How do you know when you're satisfied? How did you know when your sacral did its thing? That there's like an endless like drag. It's like doing laundry, you know, like laundry can kind of like come to a fruition at least at the end, and then it starts over again. But yeah, I think, you know, not all generators need to do physical work, but even if it's like having a checklist where you can check stuff off, so you know that you're making progress, you know that there's like a release that's happening of that energy, it's going somewhere.
You need the orgasm.
Exactly. Thank you, Kelsey. Ariana was like talking about this like rush of water going toward a wheel, and I'm like, kind of like sperm going toward an egg.
That's so interesting. I didn't conceptualize it that way, but that's cool. I like that. Yeah, and maybe it's because I have that defined motor center in my root and it's connected to my sacral center, and I just need a lot of that like actual physicality, like that's, and I also have like touch cognition, so it's nice to like get my hands and stuff. But yeah, I totally identify with that. Hey guys, that's the end of part 1. If you want to hear the rest of the conversation, head over to the Maya Games podcast, hosted by Kelsey, to hear the rest.